I was completely suicidal. I can't believe how low I got at those stages. I hit rock bottom. I don't think I would be the person I am today if I didn't go through that. The experience that I went through of being suicidal, of being really low, has given me the most beautiful outlook on the world. If I help one person out of that place that I was in, that's what would make me the happiest. How crazy is it that we assume we are supposed to know the answers to all the problems we have? How can anybody help you through something if they don't know you're going through it? You have to talk up. People get addicted to learning new shit instead of applying what they know to their life. I want to help people keep striving in the right direction. Don't let your diagnosis become your identity. Nobody is as happy as someone who used to be depressed. I'm happy, bro.
How do you define happiness?
I think happiness for me is the opportunity to chase something that I enjoy.
Before we jump into today's episode, I have a small favor to ask from you. If you've gotten any value from any of the podcasts, any of the content that I have put out, please hit the subscribe button. It honestly helps me so much. It helps this channel in growing. And as you've seen, as the channel grows, the guests get bigger and better, which means I can provide more knowledge and more value to you, the listener. Thank you and enjoy today's episode. Ty Leonard, thank you so much for making the trip down from Newcastle, 4 hours on the train, bro.
Appreciate it.
Super grateful to have you here, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. We've been planning this for a minute.
We've been speaking about it. It's like, fuck, when's it going to happen? Am I going to come up there? You're going to come down here? What is going to happen? And you messaged me last week. It's like, I'm coming down.
I'm coming down, bro. I finally got the time. It was being absolute chaos on the back end. So I just needed to have this clearer mind when we come down because I've been looking forward to having this conversation for a while.
This whole week, I've just been like, fuck yeah, Ty's coming. I'm pumped for this because ever since our first phone call, we just connected on so many levels. And it's just like, this guy's a fucking legend and I can't wait.
I think you and I are very, very similar in what we're doing. I think our attitude towards mental health as a whole is very similar too. Where like the thing that you talk about, this mental fitness side of it, that's what I've grown to really enjoy. I deeply respect both sides of that scale where if you're struggling, mental fitness probably isn't exactly the way to be looking at it. But after you get to a certain point with yourself, you've got to start looking at it as mental fitness. What am I doing that will continue to push me in the right direction? It's not all just like mental health support just for people who are struggling. You've got this attitude where you're like, I want to help people keep striving in the right direction.
That's it. Because for me, I believe this mental health epidemic that we're in right now, like, it's preventable. Fucking is preventable. By having these these conversations, and for me, it's not a mental health pity party. So many people are trapped in that. Poor me. This is what happened to me, my background, trauma, shit like that. And we'll dive into your story a bit too, because you have an interesting story. But people get so caught up in that they actually never progress forward. They just stay trapped in that bubble, and then they surround themselves with more people in that bubble, and it's just like, yeah, as I said, a fucking mental health pity party.
Bro, let's go down this rabbit hole then. When I first started doing this shit and talking to people about mental health, I joined a ton of mental health Facebook groups. And these Facebook groups, for some people, is the worst possible idea you'll ever have, is to surround yourself with people who are struggling as well, because it does exactly what you said. It just breeds this idea that if I'm struggling and I'm around other people who are struggling, I feel supported. But it's not always the case, because if those people around you are steering you towards a positive outcome, and like you said, they're sort of in this bubble, you get this thing that sort of breeds the fact that if you're struggling, it's fine to struggle. And don't get me wrong, there are times where you have to switch it off, you've got to slow down. But if you don't look forwards, if you don't look for a possible outcome, for a best possible outcome when you're going through this stuff, no one's coming to tap you on the shoulder. I say this to everybody. Mental health is the only diagnosis where nobody is coming to tell you when you're good again. You know what I mean? You break your leg, someone goes, here's a cast for 6 weeks. Like, you injure yourself, like, all right, well, your recovery is going to be this. But mental health, man, you get a packet of medication and a fucking handshake, you're out the door. And you can stay on that script for the rest of your life with no, hey, how you going? Has your circumstances changed? What did you want to try and come off them? And it blows me away. It's crazy. Like, when you say it's preventable, if it wasn't preventable, we wouldn't have mental health education. I think the same education, this is what I try to do with Better Today, the same education that we treat mental illness with should be taught to prevent it. It's as simple as that. It's like if it didn't work, we wouldn't do it. But we know exactly what to do when someone's struggling. We either educate them on therapy, so how to look at perspectives differently, how to look at whatever you're going through in a new way, or education like the stuff in the journals where you go, there is something missing from my body that doesn't allow me to feel as good as I should. They're the two things. And in my head, it does, probably like yourself. Don't get me wrong, there are circumstances. Whenever you have these conversations, someone wants to jump down your throat and be like, well, it's this. And it's like, I know there is. But I like to speak with the best possible outcome in mind. And I don't think there's anything ever wrong with aiming for the best possible outcome.
Definitely. And I think people use mental health, mental illness as an excuse as well. They say, I'm taking all this medication, like I'm going to have to be on this for the rest of my life. So I can't be this person that I want to be. I can't go and achieve the things that I want to be. And it's like a commodity. Like,
What do you think has caused that? Put you on the back foot. I ask you because I'm curious, not because I think you know the answer. Like I think the conversation you're having right now is so important, and a lot of people don't like having this conversation.
It's a rabbit hole because it's hard because
it's hard, bro. You're supposed to know the answer to that.
I think it could be a conspiracy, but I think society, the government, like they want us to be sick. They want to feed us all this medication, this shit. So we're reliant on it. We're not looking after our actual health.
Yeah. No, and that I agree with you. I agree with you purely because if we were trying to get everybody as healthy as possible, then as a society, we would look at the most common problems, and mental health is by far one of them, and we would reverse engineer it and go, the same education that we used to treat however many people they go through. Bro, Australia spent $2.1 billion on mental health related services in 2019 alone. 2.1 billion, right? If half of that was dedicated to education, we would halve the number of people next year that were struggling with their mental health. Every year, there's millions of prescriptions given out, right? How much money goes into educating people on how to live a happier, healthier life? There's nothing. So I get it. It's a conspiracy. There's a hard way to look at it. I try not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but I agree with you. I don't think our health and well-being is the number one priority.
Exactly. And we can sit here and we can blame.
And now your podcast is getting shut down.
So we can sit here, we can blame the government, society, everyone else. But at the end of the day, us as
forward, baby.
Yeah, forward. But us as individuals, we have to take personal responsibility for our life. As I said, we can sit here in the pity party, we can blame people, we can say, oh, I'm taking this medication, I have depression, anxiety, all these labels. You're in control of your own life.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and a place for medication if you're at a really dark rut. And I personally don't have experience with medication. I haven't been on it. Have you?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, so what's your take on it?
I think medication, to get this off first, medication saved my life. Like I was completely suicidal. The way I describe medication to people from my own experience was medication stopped me from falling. I was dropping and dropping and dropping. And medication's like a safety net. Medication is not designed to make you happy, right? Medication is designed to make you stable. If medication was supposed to make you happy, we'd all be on medication, jumping around, enjoying ourselves.
Because it numbs you, doesn't it?
Hey, bro, it numbs a lot of shit. Like I'm talking, I was on, at one stage, I was probably on like 4 or 5 different medications at once. Like I was heavily medicated at different stages. And, taking medication just to get through the day, medication for panic attacks, like Seroquel to try and stop the panic attacks. Then this shit at night, man, you'd take one and you could fight it all you want, man, but you were going down. Like it was hectic. So I was like sedated at different times. And like I said, it's a safety net, and it stopped me from feeling bad, but it definitely didn't allow me to feel my absolute best. I think it creates this, if this is the worst you've ever felt and this is the best, you live in this sort of middle barrier.
Stuck there.
Yeah, you don't get the highs, but you definitely don't get the lows. And I think that there is important for people, but it's not the end goal. Your end goal shouldn't be to stay here. Your end goal should be, if I'm on medication and I'm going to be in this middle bracket, the daily decisions and daily actions I take in the meantime, if you want to come off your medication, should be steered towards how do I move up this ranking here? Do you know what I mean? And it's not looking at yourself as a lack or pushing yourself too hard. And that's why it's a really hard conversation to have. Because I've been there, I can really emphasize and understand when people get shitty at this conversation, because you couldn't have told me when I was suicidal that anything that I was not doing would have been helping me. You completely get to this stage of your life where you can't possibly imagine a positive outcome. Like life, it squashes you, bro.
Yeah.
And I think the way I start to look at it now, bro, this is something I've started to try to depict to people, like these different zones that you can be in. I'll try and put this picture into your mind. So if you picture 3 circles, the first circle is struggling, the second circle is surviving, third circle is thriving. Each of these 3 circles are at the top of a column, and these columns are going to be about the most likely thoughts, feelings, and actions that you have in these different zones. I think if you start to look at these zones and you can ask yourself, which one of these zones closely represents how I think, feel, and act? What do my daily actions look like? How do I think about my problems? You'll be surprised how closely these things can start to hit the nail on the head. I think what you're saying is right. When you are struggling, if you are at this absolute crisis moment, that's where medication is for you. But I quickly got to a point where I was like, I don't like this middle barrier. I knew what it was like to be happy. Then I became depressed. And when I started to make sense of the world, I was like, I want to get back up there. I know how good it feels to feel happy. And I think the ability to look at those different stages of my life is what makes me really passionate about what I do. Because I understand when people are suicidal. I had that stage in my life where I didn't want to be here. But you've got to fucking aim forwards. You've got to be looking up the hill and trying to take yourself to a more positive place.
Definitely. And you mentioned the word suicide, and I want to ask, what's your personal opinion on suicide? Do you believe it's selfish?
Not at all.
Why so?
When I was suicidal, I didn't think about taking my own life to get away from my problems, because that's a pretty common thing to hear people say, like, suicide doesn't alleviate your problems, it passes them on to other people. I don't think, if you haven't been suicidal, you can't understand what that feels like to wake up every day and not want to be here. Like, man, I like crying yourself to sleep of a night, and I used to have these dreams, bro, dreams of dying or killing myself, and I have notes from when I used to go see my doctor, because I couldn't remember what the last couple of days had been like, because I'd be on medication, all sorts of stuff, and I used to write it out, and I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and just cry my eyes out, and I'd have to write out my thoughts because I wanted to tell my doctor what it was. And man, it is hard for you to imagine how desperately you want to feel anything else. And I don't think it is it's obviously I don't think it's the right thing for anyone to do. But to say it's selfish, I don't think you're putting yourself in that other person's shoes, because when people start leaving behind kids or family or fucking wives, all sorts of shit like that, man, you've got to try to understand what was that person going through to be willing to leave everything they love behind.
Yeah.
Like, man, it feels like you're on fire and you would do anything just to get rid of that pain. It's not a feeling of I'm just going somewhere else so I don't feel this. It's like, man, I'm desperate to not feel the way that I do.
For a period of time, I honestly thought it was selfish, because I've never been to those depths before of wanting to take my life. So for me, not understanding, me not putting myself in your situation, I thought it was selfish, especially for people, as you said, leaving families behind and stuff like that. It's like, how could you do that? Because that just passes the pain on to other people. Yeah. But now, through having these conversations, like people like yourself who have been in that point, it's really changed my perspective of, they're not in the mindset of that. they feel like that's the only way to escape the pain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. It's not. I never get angry at someone for thinking it's selfish, because I talk to a lot of people about mental health, probably like yourself. Obviously, like it's all I think about it every single day. And I talk to people who have had that opinion before. And my answer to that is, if you don't know what that feels like, I'm really happy that you think it's selfish. I am happy you think it's selfish at some stage, because to me, that tells me that you don't know what that feels like. And I don't want you to know what that feels like, but I'm never going to be angry at you for not understanding how something feels if you've never gone through it. Like I don't get arguing over that point. If someone thinks it's selfish, I mean, let them think it. Like, it doesn't affect you. Don't let, that's just like, it's the shit you talk about. Don't let those other people's opinions and thoughts and shit affect how you're doing things. I don't think I'd talked anybody out of suicide. I've talked people out of it, but man, it's a wild thing to go through, bro. Like, it change. I tell people now that nobody is as happy as someone who used to be depressed. Because after you've felt what that feels like, you got a new feeling about happiness, man. Like you look at life in this different way, and excuse me, you feel the fucking sunlight come back into the world. All of a sudden, man, I can't believe how low I got at those stages.
Do you feel like it's necessary for some people, and even yourself, to hit that rock bottom to then see the light in the world?
I don't think I would be the person I am today if I didn't go through that. And I don't look at it as this weird sort of grateful place, but I can definitely understand how going through that has made me into this person that I am today. I've always been this really outgoing, sort of bubbly person, but I got, like yourself, to lock yourself away for days, weeks, months, years, and dedicate yourself to trying to create services and conversations and resources for people out of that place. You've got to be passionate about it. And I think my really deep passion for it comes from knowing if I help one person out of that place that I was in, that's what would make me the happiest.
You just mentioned the man that you are today. What does the listener need to know about yourself, about your past, to better understand the man that sits in front of us today?
All right, let's try and go down that. I've always been an incredibly deep thinker, really emotional person. If I'm happy, really happy. If I'm sad, I'm really sad. And I think before I hit rock bottom, that controlled me a lot. I didn't know how to notice cues when I was starting to feel down, or I didn't know how to notice when some of my emotions were starting to get on top of me. And the person that I've become is a better person. I'm more patient. I'm more understanding. I look at my problems differently, and I think the experience that I went through of being suicidal, of being really low, has given me the most beautiful outlook on the world. Because I'm not as much in a rush. I know the importance of spending my time, my energy on things that I really enjoy, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy, bro. I make a lot of effort to make sure that my life is spent doing things that I enjoy, because I know I didn't always have that.
You're a man with purpose now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't get all too deep with myself all the time, but I ask myself a lot, are you happy? Are you happy? And if you can ask yourself that and honestly answer it, you'll start moving through life differently. You start caring about all these different things a little bit less, and people's opinions, because you would have got this too. I'll ask you this. At the start of this journey, you said, I'm going to start this mental health podcast, right? Mm-hmm. There is very few people who come out slapping you on the back going, oh, bro, that's mad. Like, congratulations.
My mum.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very lonely road to go down at the start. Like, it's what we do for lack of a better word, a marketing angle. We're trying to make this cool. That's the purpose, to make this accessible, to make this more realistic and more normal, just to have these conversations. But it's not it's not the coolest thing. And it's not, I don't say that in a bad way. It's not the coolest thing. People don't look at what we do as the coolest thing you could possibly do. And I've never begrudged that. But you've got to be really, really passionate about doing this to sit here for a couple of years and grind it out and finally get it to this. Well, you've got here, you know what I mean? You've got it to this incredible point where that took a lot of time and energy and a lot of focus and a lot of stuff behind the scenes to stick to it and get this to what it is now.
You have to. When I started, I had no clue where it was going to end up.
Yeah.
Didn't think I'd have a studio. Even 12 months ago, I was in a spare bedroom in my parents' house. Now I'm here in a studio. Like, you just have to persist and just trust the process and just work hard each and every day. And I love that you mentioned that we're trying to make mental health cool, fun, bring humor into it. And the way that I like to explain it, even like, say 5 years ago, breathwork meditation is like a weird hippie thing, right? Now everyone's doing it because it's like they've seen the benefits of it, high performance, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do with mental health. And that's why I speak about mental fitness, because it incorporates all that, the mind, body, spirit, all together into what we do, into these modalities and having these amazing conversations. We bring awareness to it, but we also give the actionable steps that people can actually take to implement it into their day-to-day life so that they can be better today, to create the life that they desire and to destigmatize mental health.
Yeah.
Because why do you believe there's such a fucking stigma around it?
This is a good topic, man. Like, I just think, man, I'll tell you this, and I know my dad's never going to listen to this podcast, so and I mean it a polite way. He's not into this shit. I grew up, I think a lot of the way that I struggled at a younger age was because of the energy I took on from my old man. My old man's a very lock your shit down, get through your stuff. At least he was until the last couple of years. He's got chronic heart disease at the moment. So I think he's becoming very aware of his mortality, and he's starting to look at different things of his life and think, fuck, I should have put more energy. But he's always been this very lock it down, never really says I love you, like give you a hug, pat you on the back, get on your way sort of shit. And he's had chronic heart disease for 30 years. Had lots of heart surgeries, all this sort of shit. Anyway, when I watched Dad go through these problems in life, as a young man, I never watched him complain. I never watched him say, oh, I wish I wasn't going through this or fucking anything. He just sort of put his head down and kept marching through things. He always had this attitude, oh, what are you going to do? You got to keep fucking going now. And I think that is the energy people had to have when the services weren't available that we have now. That was the only way to get through shit. You had to fucking put your head down and fucking bite down on your mouth guard and keep fighting. Mm-hmm. That was the way that people learned how to deal with life. We're in the first wave, this generation that has access to fucking everything you can possibly imagine. And I think in 10 years' time, there will be no stigma around this. It'll be so like I think we're already at. I truly do think there is no stigma at this point now, and that's a big thing to say. But I think if you think there's stigma around this, look at the people around you and ask yourself: is the stigma coming from the world or is it coming from the people around you? That's a pretty deep question to ask yourself, because if you don't feel comfortable talking up about who you are, you're most likely not sitting in the right circle. But you can be anything these days. You can identify, and you see it every single day. People identifying as whatever they please, and I'm not against. Do whatever you want to do, but you can't tell me there is too much stigma for you to talk about your mental health with the way everybody talks about anything they want these days. I think you've got to, so like you said, have a little bit of. You've got to have a look at where do you think that stigma's coming from? Because I don't think if anyone came up to you or I or our community or the people that we surround ourselves with and said, I'm struggling, there's no stigma.
That's a great point.
Do you know what I mean? Like the word stigma, who's giving you stigma? Who's making this hard for you to talk up? Because I think that only applies as long as you let it.
Definitely.
I don't like. It wasn't cool when we started talking about it, like fucking 5 years ago, right? Mm. But you sort of got to this point where you went, this is what I believe in. This is how I want to talk. This is how I want to interact with the world. And now you've got to this point where no one would dare come and tell you this doing what you're doing is a bit weird, isn't it? You're like, well, I like what I do. Like, this is it.
Turn on the news and look what's on.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like, it's all positive. And I think if you can have that attitude towards it, that stigma, man, it only sticks if you let it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you turn on the news, go on social media, the shit that you see on there, if people can speak and post stuff about that, like, if there's still a stigma around mental health, like, you're with the wrong people.
Yeah, bro. Like, when I started this mental health thing, right, I got a little bit of shit for it. And I had different moments, man, where it fucked with you a little bit. You're like, oh, I didn't like that, but I knew what I was doing. I knew why I was doing it, and that was the stigma. The stigma was there. I had this moment, and I just went, okay, well, that's not for me. That if you believe that what I'm doing is weird or fucking anything, that's your circle, and this is mine. And I'm happy being over here. I'm happy you being over there. I don't need you. There's no stigma in myself.
The thing is it weird, or is it bringing out the insecurities?
I think it is that. I think it's bringing out the insecurities, man. It's very interesting, right? So at the start of this, nobody was rushing to come and talk to me about mental health. But over the years, every time I'm on the pista, I'm out, I'm with friends, it gets to fucking 12 o'clock, man, and it happens to me a lot now. There's someone wandering over to have a chat. And I like that. I like that I'm available. But in my head, I go like, this is, the reason we do this is so we can have these conversations when we're sober. And I tell everybody, if they come up to me and they're drinking, I would all the time. I'm not going to tell you to stop talking, but I would, and I think you would appreciate this conversation more if we had it when we're sober. Mm-hmm. And you really start to tap into some people's heads, man, and you go like, you obviously want this conversation. You want it. You're not having it because you're drunk. You're having it because you want it.
Yeah.
The drunk, the alcohol just gave you a little bit of confidence to come and start it. And yeah, what was the question?
We just go on tangents, bro. That's what I love about this podcast. I wanted to come back to you not knowing how to express your emotions from seeing your dad, and I could totally relate to that. So my dad is like totally the same, like shut off. He has struggled with his mental health his whole life. He has upbringing traumas, all that stuff that he's never dealt with. And for a long time, I had a lot of blame and resent towards him for the way that he treated me. And he was just doing the best with what he had. And now myself being a father, I understand that and putting myself in his shoes. So that's been a massive eye-opener for myself to be able to, in a way, forgive him. And not saying his actions were right, but me coming from a place of empathy and understanding and letting go of that blame and that resent towards him. And the words that he would say, the impact that he had on my life in my upbringing, it really affected my confidence, my self-worth, and brought on a lot of anxiety within me. And I never knew how to express myself because that's all I seen growing up. The only way I knew to express my emotions was through my mum. So I was a big mama's boy.
Yeah.
And I love her, and she listens to my podcast. My dad, I don't think's ever I don't think my dad's ever listened to my podcast.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this lately, and you know how the question comes up, who would be your number one guest to come on your podcast? My number one guest would actually be my dad. Because I've never had the connection with him, and I don't know do you have a connection with your dad? Yeah. Have you always, or? Yeah.
I'm the only one out of my siblings that talks to my whole family.
Oh, okay.
I've always been a little bit of a peacekeeper in the family.
Yeah.
Over the last 5 years, it's sort of just everyone sort of split and go. I think I took it upon myself at a young age to try and hold that glue together because parents got divorced when we were young. We're back and forth between mum and dads a lot. And I know that at a young age, our parents sort of pitted the other parent against us in different situations. So we went through that at a young age. But yeah, I got a connection with that.
Yeah, so my parents are still together, but there was always that kind of separation, like my brother and my dad, because they were like more alike, and then me and my mum. which really impacted me because it was like a war within the household.
Mm.
And as I said, it killed my confidence, self-worth, had a lot of blame, a lot of resentment. And once I let go of that, have that empathy, I was like, fuck. I knew you always loved me, but my level of love towards you is on a whole new level now. And
Yeah.
being better understanding who he is has allowed me to then create a stronger connection with him, which has then helped me in this journey.
Yeah.
Because in a way, by me leading by example, having these conversations, it's not perfect now. It's showing him like, hey, if my son can do this, like, why can't I? And we're not exactly at that point yet, but I feel like he's starting to see what I'm doing. So I feel like in the next couple of years, I feel like our bond, our connection's gonna come a lot stronger. And it's just by having the conversation, having the awareness, and by me wanting to become a better version of myself. And I know a lot of people go through this. They don't have the connections with their parents and they blame, they have resentment, and that can affect their mental health. And it's like, you have to, in a way, lead by example to, I wouldn't say be a parent for your parent, but like be that example for them.
Yeah. The thing about resentment, bro, like that, I went through that same stage. When I was suicidal, I went through a couple of different stages. I'll tell you about the first one. When I was suicidal, my mum was one of the people that I would call, and I would call her up, crying my eyes out. Like, I'll fucking get emotional talking about it now, crying my eyes out. And she would beg me. She'd say, "What do you want me to do?" And I used to say, "I don't fucking know. I don't know, but I need something." And I had these different moments, man, where I was angry because I wanted her to solve it. Like, I really did. I was like, why can't you help me through this? And I got to this really weird point, bro, where I was like, I started to look at mum and dad and my struggles, and I did the exact same thing. I went, how dare you let me get to here? And it wasn't until years later when I started to learn about myself and I realized how my parents they never tried to do anything negative. They tried to do the best they could with the information they had. That's the exact same thing you just said. And I've gone through that a couple of stages now. Like, it's really hard, man. Like, when you're struggling with your mental health, one of the first things they tell everybody is speak up, talk to someone about it. And I did that. They told me when I was suicidal, you need to tell a couple of your close friends so you've got this point of contact. Someone knows what you're going through. One of the most important things they said was, how can anybody help you through something if they don't know you're going through it? You have to talk up. And I did. I spoke to a couple of friends, and it was only by a text. And I said to the boys, I'm suicidal. I need help. And the boys went, got you. Like, it's just the boys. They went, sweet, bro. No, like, they knew I was struggling. I think they were probably aware that I was suicidal. But for me, it was the first time I vocalized it. And I felt good. They said, yeah, we got you. And then I sort of went radio silent again. And I got really angry at these couple of friends for a while. And I was living with one of them. Really angry because they didn't keep checking in. They didn't do what I wanted them to do. And I got to this point where I realized I was asking people who didn't understand mental health to help me through something that I was going through. And the way I describe that to people now is, if I said, hey, bro, I need you to come out here and fix my car. Most people go, bro, I don't know how to fix a car. What the fuck are you talking about? And you can't be angry for someone for not knowing how to help. That's why this is available. That's why these podcasts blow up. That's why people like listening to people, because if your mum paints fingernails and your dad drives a garbage truck, they're not going to be the best two people to talk about your mental health to. It's great to be able to talk to people that you care and love about that are in your circle, but you need to know who are the right people to talk to. And that's what I realized. I was like, you have to go on, like, I took it upon myself. I went, this isn't how my story ends. I can do some shit. I'm going to, whatever it is. And I just started taking it day by day and learning. And I go to this point, man, where I fucking love my mum and dad now more than anything. You know what I mean? And I don't begrudge them. I think they did the absolute best they could. And after you become self-aware and after you learn some things about yourself, it's your responsibility to make sure that shit ends there. That's all it is.
Breaking the cycle.
Breaking the cycle, bro. Like, man, our parents didn't have phones growing up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't have access to this shit. How can you be angry at someone for, like, how crazy is it that we assume we are supposed to know the answers to all the problems we have? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when you start struggling, man, you don't want to tell anyone. You don't know what the fuck's going on. You don't know how to vocalize it. And you assume, this is my thing, and how fucking preposterous of you to think you know the answers to everything. You ain't supposed to know how to handle everything that happens in your life. The sooner you get comfortable with going, I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't get it. The sooner someone steps in and goes, where you lost? I can help you now. Like, you have to look at the simplest way to solve your problems. There's my rant again. Sorry, bro.
I love that. I think as humans, we overcomplicate shit. We, in our head, what we create up here, the narrative that we create is like, fuck, it's so complicated. I'm going through all this complicated stuff right now. But as soon as you put your hand up and you vocalize what's happening, you're like, oh, wow, it may be not as bad as what I've portrayed up here.
Yeah.
And this person can actually give me the tool for help me navigate through this part of my life. And it's just, you're never going to know unless you ask a question.
Yeah.
Just put your hand up. And
Excuse me.
the other side of that is, so what we're doing, a lot of it's around personal development, becoming the best versions of ourselves. People can also go too far that way. And for myself, I got trapped in going to all these seminars, these events, looking for the quick fix, the answers. Yeah. Instead of looking myself in the mirror and asking myself the questions. Quick one, this podcast is now sponsored by Savvy Beverages, the 100% all-natural brain-boosting nootropics drink. Savvy have actually just revamped all their flavors, and let me tell you, they are amazing. My favorite flavor being the mixed berry, but they also have lime and a new flavor, passion fruit. But I'll be honest, taste is not the only reason why I love Savvy. I used to struggle with coffee, any sort of energy drink, anything that had caffeine in it, I could not have because it would set off anxiety within me. Now, what I love about Savvy is it has a 2-to-1 ratio of caffeine and a little ingredient called L-theanine. Now, here's the kicker. L-theanine allows you to experience the energy boost of caffeine without those pesky, anxious side effects. It's honestly a game changer, and it's why I continue to drink Savvy. So if you're interested in trying out Savvy Beverages for yourself, head over to their website at www.savvybeverage.com.au. The link will be in the description. And as a special treat, they're offering an exclusive discount just for you. So use my discount code BETTER20, so that's BETAR20, during your checkout to receive 20% off your order. Let's get back to the episode.
You know what I found, bro? We are in the generation of self-help books and reading and all these sorts of things. And I think people get addicted to learning new shit instead of applying what they know to their life. Do you know, I did it. Like, I've got to pull myself up sometimes where I'm stressed to the core and I'm fucking reading a book about business. And I'm like, bro, some stage you've got to put the book down and sit with yourself and go, I got to make sure I'm good here. You can't always be looking 10 steps down the road. You'll get lost in the sauce.
Yeah. That's how we overstimulate ourselves. Like, even yesterday, I was fucking stressing out, right? I'm stressing out about life, and then I'm listening to an Alex Hormozi audio on sales and marketing. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not even really processing what's happening here because my mind is somewhere else.
And we think we're doing the right thing because we've got that playing. And sometimes it's more important to sit and just, you know, take a breath. And I did a short podcast with a dude named Sky Bear last night who lives in Bali, breathwork facilitator. And we had this conversation about that, like knowing when you've got to slow down. Like, just, and it's hard because you're a father, you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you have another job, you're in the grind, and it's really easy to get so focused on the importance of grinding that you forget, what am I grinding for? Like right now, bro, you and I are both where we would have dreamed of being a couple of years ago. But I don't think either of us probably sit down enough and go,
no, because we're looking at the next 2 years. This is
it.
Yeah.
Look at this. Like, this is one of the coolest setups I've seen, and we don't, like, you've got to walk in sometimes and turn the lights on, have a smile and go, fucking how good is this? Like, it's beautiful, bro. And I think that perspective comes from my struggles, because I learned to go, look at how it used to be. Look at what it is now. It's like, we did it.
Yeah. It's sitting in reflection, massive part. And I do that, but a big part of me is like proud but not satisfied.
Yeah. And I think that's it is a very important part of what we do. You have to be aiming up the road. You want growth, and we live in this fucking hustlers fucking world now where it's grind, that sort of thing. It truly is important. You have to have that bit of dog in you that goes, I want to be the best at something, to truly even make it halfway to being the best.
Thing is though, we're not human doings, we're human beings. We have to learn to be along.
That's good.
My wisdom for today.
Yeah, that's a little bomb for you. That's good. You know what you said before that it grabbed me, bro, was like, our parents, the way they brought us up, they only had their parents as a point of reference to grow up. Yeah. And I've really started to, I tell everybody now, like, if you're struggling, if you're suicidal, if you're depressed, don't look at what you can do today. Look at what you've done before today. And if you can't figure it out in the last 6 months or last 2 years, look at your childhood. And I guarantee there's going to be things in your childhood that have steered you towards being the person that you are today. Whether that's a little bit insecure, whether that's overly confident, whether you're a bit arrogant, like, everything is childhood. You're like, it's fucking bonkers when you start looking into it and reading about it, like how almost every part of you, unless, put it this way, unless you have put a lot of effort into intentionally becoming someone, then you have been shaped by every one of your experiences before today. And if you're struggling, if you have a poor mindset, you learnt that. And it's not like somebody taught it to you, but you learnt. If you grew up in a house where your parents achievements didn't add up to something, you get this low self-worth thing, and you don't know how to and it goes one or two ways. You either become this hyper successful person because you constantly feel inadequate. I need to achieve everything to win. Or you develop this mindset that says, I'm never going to add up. What's the point in trying? And man, you start to look at that shit. And I did that through like NLP sessions and therapy and inner child work and shit like that.
So you've done timeline therapy?
Done different shit, man. Like, I'll tell you, I haven't said this to anyone, especially on a podcast before, so this will be good. I did a session of NLP, and it was this inner child work, finding out. I was fine at the stage, but I was curious, and it's sort of a visualization exercise. So you're going to go back and you're going to find a moment that you think shaped you. And you're sort of laying down, your eyes closed, and they guide you through this thing. And I think the question was, when was the last time you felt low self-worth? Or you weren't good enough? And when I said something, this chick who was doing the session goes, go back further. And she kept saying it, bro. And I got back to this conversation, man, when I probably would have been like 8 years old. Now so
need some more water, bro.
I got back to this point when I was 8 years old, and I was handing my mum a cup of coffee, and she sort of turned her nose up at it. And my mum's a beautiful person, but a little bit hard to please. And sometimes she wouldn't mind telling you if it wasn't okay. She had a sip of this coffee and sort of turned her nose up at it, just like, oh. And it was crazy because that was the first time that I noticed low self-worth. And I don't think my self-worth problems came from that, but it added onto it. And eventually a couple of those instances where you're young and impressionable and, you're really vulnerable, I had these moments when I was really young where I wasn't good enough, or I watched my parents sort of break up, and I went through this really vulnerable stage of my life where things weren't really positive, really nurturing. And I got to this realization that, like, my self-worth was amplified by the way I thought about the world from the experiences I went through at a young age. And I think you would be very hard-pressed to find somebody that isn't in that exact same boat. You want to talk to anybody about something they're struggling with, anybody that's become suicidal, it's very, very hard to find somebody that early stage of their life hasn't heavily influenced the way that they're going through their problems.
Definitely. Our upbringing shapes us into who we are. And from 0 to 7 is our imprinting stage. So, you giving your coffee to your mom, if you're under 7 and you get that impression, you're like, fuck,
Yeah.
I have lack of self-worth. And it compounds over time. And the more that it happens, then you actually start to believe it. And you take it on as like a label. Identity. Yeah. What's your take on labels and identities, especially when it comes to mental health?
Asking good questions here, bro.
Like, speaking about kids and the schooling system, kids are labeled ADHD, anxiety, depression, all that stuff. What is your take on that?
You got the killer question. I'll tell you, I'm really interested in this topic. I'll tell you what I thought from my own personal experience, not for everybody else. When I was going through chaos at a younger age, I didn't understand depression. I didn't understand anxiety. I didn't understand anything that I do now. And a label helped me make sense of it. When someone said you're suffering with anxiety, it was the best possible thing because I started to make sense of what was going on. But a label, I started to take that on as my identity. So I talk to people at my workshops about this. Don't let your diagnosis become your identity. And I did. When I was young, I started to become Ty with anxiety. It's the way I identified. I was like, I'm Ty, I have anxiety. So when I started to feel anxious, I would remind myself, that's your anxiety coming on. When I was starting to feel a bit low, I'd go, well, that's your depression coming on. And it took me a very long time to realize I'm capable of controlling some of these feelings. I can notice them, and it's fine to have the label, but don't make that the be all and end all. It's fucking crazy. I think especially for a young kid, I don't agree that it should be right to tell any young kid that you are depressed or you are anxious, because you don't have the skills necessary to figure out where that belongs in your identity. And if you take that on and, you see young kids going, I have depression. I talk to kids all the time because my background's youth work. And you hear it, man, and I just think, like, I want to tell them, man, like, you don't have anxiety. It's not something that sticks on you and it doesn't come off. You're struggling with something. It's like saying I am anxiety. Like I'm not anxiety. It's something that I went through and it's something that I struggled with, but it should be way down here in the list of things that you describe yourself with. Because if it's right up here, every single time something goes wrong in your life, you remind yourself, I allow space for this in my life. And it's important at some stages, but at some point you've got to go, I'm going to start to shuffle that down the list.
That's it. Because then if you take on the I am, I have, which turns into I can't or I can't be.
What's your take on it?
I don't like labels. I think, as you said, I think there's a time and place. Like if you don't know what's happening and someone diagnoses you something, it gives you a bit of clarity around it. But it's then not letting that label become your identity. That's the tricky bit that people get stuck on. For example, anxiety, I used to let that take over my life. Like, I'm anxious, I can't do this, stay in my little bubble. If I was in a conversation like this, it's like, oh, you're looking at me funny, or the cameras, where are the emergency exits, all that kind of shit in case something goes wrong, because I would create all these narratives in my head of all the worst possible outcomes. Now, I understand that I do struggle with anxiety from time to time. I'm not anxiety, but it's also shifting your perspective on depression, on anxiety, whatever the case is. For example, me, when it comes to anxiety, I used to see it as a bad thing, something that held me back in life, something that killed my confidence. Now I see anxiety as a sign of something to go towards, something that I need to deal with. But also I've seen studies where anxiety and excitement have the same symptoms on a physiological level. So it's like, okay, am I anxious or am I excited? Like this morning I woke up and I was like a bit jittery and shit, but I wasn't anxious. I'm fucking pumped to have this conversation. And it's just that mind shift, that perspective shift really can put you in a better state of mind of, okay, anxiety is not bad. It's actually good. I am not anxiety. I experience it from time to time, but it's not a bad thing. It's actually telling me something.
I think there's the big thing that's really hard for people to decipher between is feeling anxious and having anxiety. Two very, very different things. When I was suffering from panic attacks and crying myself to sleep, I wasn't feeling anxious. I had anxiety. It was fucking in me, man. Like it was more than a feeling. It became a physiological way that I was dealing with the world. I was never calm. I never was able to calm myself. Like I heard, when I started talking about this, there was this chick, she was like, oh, I had anxiety. She was with my friends. I had anxiety. Remember when I couldn't dance at the thing the other night? And I was like, if that's how you, like, I would never tell someone that's not anxiety, but I felt like going, I wish that was the way that was.
That's
anxiety.
like performance anxiety.
Yeah, it's like, you're right, you're nervous. That's normal. And I think for the last 10 years, we've waved this flag, this mental health awareness flag. This is something I'm really passionate about talking about, the awareness flag. The last 10 years, we waved a flag going, hey, you might be struggling. Hey, you might be struggling. Hey, you might be struggling. So we've fucking really tuned people into the where I might not be good. We've made people constantly ask themselves, are you good? Are you good? And you're like, fuck, I don't know, am I? Like, you keep fucking saying it. Like, I don't know anymore. And now the problem we have is for the last 10 years, I no doubt this has helped a lot of people, but for the last 10 years, we've asked everybody, hey, are you struggling with your mental health? Now there are so many people who are unsure of where they're at that there's no services to get to. It's 3 months, 6 months wait to see a psychologist or a counselor. Appointments are $285 an hour. The pandemic is that we don't have enough services to treat what's going on anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's not a problem that people know they're struggling. It's a problem when they know they're struggling and they can't fucking talk to anyone about it.
Exactly. And you mentioned waving the flag. When it comes to nervous and anxiety, because we've waved the flag so much, people that feel nervous, like, oh fuck, maybe there's something wrong with me.
I've got anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like, I think people forget that if you aren't confident, it doesn't mean you have anxiety. We live in this world where everything's through a screen, so we don't see the nerves. We don't see how people feel, what happens behind the screen. So we constantly see the best of everybody around us. We forget that before and after that camera goes on, people are different.
Yeah.
Even this, like, you know what I mean? We get a little bit of excitement. You would have done it too, man. You sit down to record a video and you do it 10 times and you post a good one.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? And then if somebody compliments that video, you're happy, but you forget to go, there's 50 takes that get me to this confident looking person that you see in front of the camera. And I think people, it's hard, man, because I don't want to tell anybody that is struggling, don't take it seriously, but sometimes you've got to ask yourself, where do I fit? How am I capable of controlling this? Do you know what I mean? That's the only difference is now people have access to stuff like you. People have access to stuff like Better Today where they can actually go and learn about some stuff without having to go and put the label on yourself, without having to go through the complete process of, do I need a diagnosis? It's like, look at your daily actions, look at your life, look at everything that's going on around you at the moment, and ask yourself, is that the environment? Are these the thoughts? Are these the actions of somebody who is a confident, happy person? Do you know what I mean? Like you can change a lot of shit by changing the way you think, feel, and act. I don't think medication and I don't think diagnosis are cure for shit. Do you know what I mean?
It's like the Band-Aid thing.
Before you were good at anything, you sucked at everything. And I think your mental health is no different. I truly think of it like that now, and I've got to be careful who I say this to. Probably shouldn't say it to 7,000 people who listen to your podcast, but the thing I tell people is you aren't, I forget what I was going to say, you aren't supposed to know how to do this. Like I've started to treat mental health as sort of a game. You have to know what the rules are. You have to know what is going to make me feel shit. If you had a drawing board, right? I do this exercise at our workshop. If you had a big whiteboard and I got you to write down, line down the middle. On the left side is everything that's positive. On the right is everything that's negative. If I asked you, write down every negative thing you've done over the last week, and I mean negative as in not getting 8 hours sleep a night, how many times you're eating shit food,
yep.
The way you think, the way you feel, who you hang out with, right? There's so many things that we're aware of that are in the negative case that we do without sort of putting too much emphasis on it. And we get to a stage where if you could do that and you got a score, so for everything on the left-hand side, you give yourself a point. Everything on the right-hand side, you give yourself a point. That's a way to straight away know what is going on in my life that I know is not helping me. It's so simple when you start to understand how to look at it, why you might be feeling the way that you are. You need to have a better way of looking at your problems. I think most people don't have insurmountable problems. They have inefficient problem-solving skills. There's my bomb.
I love it. Yeah. If it's measurable, then you can make changes, right? And just by doing that simple task, even on a piece of paper, if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, you've slept in, you're not exercising, you're in control of all that. Imagine if you changed that and that went to the other side and you've racked up all the score tally here.
Yeah.
Imagine how much better your life would be. Little changes each and every day. And I speak about the 1%. Every day is a chance to get 1% better, to build your mental fitness. And that comes into all those areas. But you first have to have the awareness to be able to, okay, what is my life currently looking like right now? And what changes can I make? And
ask yourself them honest questions.
Awareness is the first thing. And I feel like we have plenty of awareness. It's the actionable steps to back that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why these conversations are the things people tune into, you know? Because we all want to feel better. We're just looking for who can help me do it a little bit easier. And that's what the beauty of all this is. Like, you get to do this in a, I don't know, man. Imagine how many people don't struggle because of things like this. Because they hear something or they change their life a little bit. Like, that's why I talk about the way things were dealt with a long time ago. Like, my old man didn't have access to this. He still struggles with anxiety. Sometimes in my head, I'm like, just go and fucking listen to someone. Like,
That's it, but
you know what I mean? There's shit out there.
you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
Yeah, man.
It's a tough game, you know?
Yeah, it is, bro. And I think just the benefit is knowing I'm putting something out there that helps people. I can't be mad at that.
That's all we can do. Even if we impact one person and they go and pass that on to someone else, it's creating that ripple effect.
Yeah. I think that's what these, if we talk about this bit. All right. So when I came out the other side of being suicidal and depressed and stuff, I wanted to create something that I could have given to my younger self. Like, that's truthfully what it was. People always say, what would you tell your younger self? And I was like, I'm going to make it. And in these little journals here, I created this to be every tip, trick, piece of knowledge, little thing that I'd learnt along the way, because I found so many people, when you start struggling with your mental health, you have to search high and low for the answers. And it's great. No, it's a little bit different now even, because these started a couple of years ago, better and better. But this, even with podcasts, right? You hear podcasts, then you've got to go to a different podcast to get a different bit. And like that there, I hired a psychologist, I hired a nutritionist, and we consulted with a counselor. And my whole idea was to create the fundamental pieces of information that everybody should know if you're struggling with your mental health. These are the daily decisions and daily actions that you can take that will steer you towards positivity no matter where you are. Whether you're suicidal and having no fucking clue what to do, these are some of the easiest actions you can take. So I think when you start to struggle, you should be looking at what are some of the simplest things I can do. How do I get these easy wins? And that's what I created it as. Like, there's been a lot of thought and effort that goes into it. The paper's slightly off white because when you're anxious, you don't like, if something's too white to read on, you don't like it. There's the psychology of colors that comes into it. But most of all, the most important thing was it had to be easy to digest. I've left the hospital before with papers, pamphlets to read, right? And they suck. They suck, man. Like, somebody who's suicidal is not going to sit down and read through one of them pamphlets. You might have a loved one that takes it and goes, thank you. Like, that's what you find the most, man. I just wanted to create something that was really, really simple, really easy to read. So what you actually do is, all you have to do is fill out 1 page a day. And the whole idea of this is just to learn one thing. So like, you know, the very first thing you learn in there is about gut health. Very complex topic, broken down to 1 page, but it has a little prompt at the bottom to go to the QR code. So in the back of the book, we have that QR code there.
Oh, yeah.
So the QR code takes you to everyone's going to see that now. That QR code will take you to a part on our website where you can read long tail articles on those topics. So if you want it nice, short and sweet, you get it on the page. If you're like, all right, that's something I need to learn more about, or I want to, there's a longer article there for you to go and read.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this now, and this falls under everything that I touch on when it comes to mental fitness, like mind, body, spirit. Like, this is the mental fitness fucking diary, bro. I love it. And what I'm looking at right now is caffeine and L-theanine. And we were speaking about this prior. And coming into the conversation around anxiety, I mentioned that I can't do high levels of caffeine because it, like, in a way triggers it because it increases your heart rate and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, what about L-theanine? Because it balances it out. So talk to me about that, and how have you learned to include caffeine into your daily life and not set off anxiety?
Yeah. So first of all, I definitely don't struggle like I used to. So I won't say L-theanine, if you're struggling with severe anxiety, is going to solve all your problems. But there are a couple of things you should definitely know about if you have anxiety, or if you have these moments where caffeine sort of sets you off, because there's a vicious cycle that you struggle with. If you have anxiety, you're an overthinker, bad sleeper, right? You stay up late, you have bad night's sleep, you wake up in the morning, you're tired, your body's not ready to take in as much caffeine, but you're tired. So you have the coffee, then you play this dangerous game, man, where like one coffee might just get you to where you need to be, but it might tip you over that edge too, where you get real jittery, real anxious. L-theanine, what it does is it helps to take that jitteriness away from the brain, but it lets you have a little bit of caffeine as well. So it balances out this thing. This is the reason I've got shit like that in this journal, is because I struggled with anxiety for fucking years. I was in and out of psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, GPs, on and off medication. Nobody told me simple shit like that.
Never heard of it until today.
It fucking drives me mental, man. Like, this is some of the stuff that, you know, the other thing that we talk about in there, bro, is GABA. GABA, it's called gamma aminobutyric acid, is a naturally occurring amino acid in the brain. What GABA does, it's nicknamed the brakes of the brain. So as you start to get excited, nervous, anxious, things like this, when your brain's firing, GABA is the chemical that's released. And like, I might butcher this just a little bit, but I got the fucking idea down. But hold on. So the GABA it releases in the brain, and it tells your brain to chill out. Now, if you've struggled with anxiety like I did for a very long time, your brain, what I've learned to understand, this isn't clear, concise science around this, but the idea is that if you have been releasing GABA consistently trying to calm your brain down, your brain is going to start to burn out these GABA receptors, and it's not going to start doing what it should do. You can buy GABA from Nourished Health Hub, where I get that shit from, for $30 in a capsule. And you can take that at the end of the day, and it's going to start to do exactly what it is. It starts to tell your brain to chill out a little bit. Why are we told about it? It blows me away that you can buy some of this stuff from places like Nourished Health Hub, places like iHerb. You can get these supplements that start to pick up the slack and what's missing in your brain, right? The first thing we're prescribed is medication. It drives me nuts, man. But like, the whole idea of this, I just went, what are all these essential things that if I could go back, I would tell myself? And I put it all into a book, and the books are fucking $55. And I was like, it has to be affordable, it has to be accessible, it has to be reliable. They were my 3 rules when I was creating it. I wanted to make sure nobody had to choose between putting a roof over their head or food in their mouth and their mental health. Because I stopped seeing psychiatrists when I was suicidal because I couldn't afford to, after your plan ran out, I was like, see you soon. Like, you walk out of there going, fuck, what happens next? This is something I would have given to my younger self. It's also something I would have given to my mum, because I knew my mum was struggling immensely. If you're a parent out there and your son is struggling, your daughter's struggling, you don't know how to help them, reading something like this will make you understand how many different things you can use to influence mental health and steer it towards positivity.
Man, I love this. On the topic of supplements, if you were to list, say, your top 5 supplements, and I know supplement is the last thing we should go to. We've got to sort out all that, other stuff first, but I love the topic of supplements because it helps us go from here to fucking high performance all the way up here. What are your top 5 supplements that have helped you?
I'll tell you, there's 2 ways I look at that. Most people are probably deficient in what their absolute basics are, like vitamin B, vitamin C, omega-3 fish oils, essential for mental health. Essential. What it does, that's brain health. If you talk about mental health, you're talking about the health of your brain.
Yep.
So what I remind people of is there are lots of things. Mental health isn't just depression and anxiety. It's the health of your brain. If your brain isn't in good health, it won't work properly. You'll start to feel anxious, depressed. Those sorts of things. But then I started to look into stuff like neurotransmitters and performance stuff. That there is one of my favorite things now for, like you said, getting up to that next level.
Yeah.
Bright Mind Complex. So I get that from Nourished Health Hub. It is fantastic for just having me. Now I'm sitting in front of the computer for 10 hours a day. Stuff like that. That anything with L-theanine. These drinks, man, I haven't had one of these exact ones yet, but I've had different drinks like this before. Bit of caffeine, bit of L-theanine. You get the buzz. You're a bit more switched on and focused. The supplement's one called Magic Mushies. And it's a neurotransmitter supporter, similar, bit of caffeine, bit of thing, but things like lion's mane, alpha GPC. I don't know if that's a fucking peptide or if that's a neurotransmitter, but yeah, like looking into that, like neurotransmitter support is fucking insane. Like shit like lion's mane, you don't realize how much better your mental state can be until you start looking into some of that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, like this is lion's mane, isn't it? Like reishi, there's all different kinds of mushrooms. You got it all in there?
You can get a page in here.
Yeah. How long did it take to create this?
Years.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's
And where can the people find it?
Find it on our website, wearebettertoday.com. So there you go. Go to page 64, brother. I'll show the people this one.
Oh, yep.
Supplements for optimum mental health. So like shit like this, man, how simple is it just to get a little book and go, all right, if I know these are the basics I should be taking, straight away I can go and take them. Nice.
Bro,
try and say that second last one. Adenosyltheanine. I just call it same. But that 5-hydroxytryptophan. I know how to say that one. N-acetylcysteine, so NAC. But yeah, vitamin 3, magnesium, vitamin D. Do you get into much of the nootropics? Have you looked into it?
I've only just started getting into it. Do you know much about it?
Not enough to be sitting here giving people advice on it. As I said, when I consulted these, when I came out to design this book, one of the most important things was it wasn't just me going, hey, I think this. I got a nutritionist who just fucking baffles me with the knowledge that this girl has, and a psychologist too, because I wanted to make sure anything we put out was something that they would recommend or they would say as well. But that's why the journal's there. So that's the stuff from Nourish. You can see it on the next page. But I'm also going to give you a couple of these journals. I think I've got a couple more in there as well. Give them out as you please, but I'd love to see maybe just someone who comments on a snippet or something like that. Pick a few people, send them out.
A little giveaway.
Yeah, let's do something like that so people can actually see what these things are all about. Because I think, like I said, it's been important for me to make sure these were accessible. And I think podcasts like this, you've got such a big audience of people who would benefit from stuff like that straight away, bro. This is how we make change. Like the collaborations like this, two different people who care deeply about what they're saying, it's perfect.
And through this conversation, it's the awareness piece, but this is the action. These are the steps.
Now you're talking.
And that's why I feel like I connect to so much of you is you understand the awareness, but it's like the only way we truly make change is by taking fucking action.
Yeah.
And stuff like this, man, I'm going to get benefits out of it. Like, I'm definitely going to use it. So super grateful for you giving it. Talk to me about Better Today, bro. Like, what is it? How did that get started?
So starting with the name, I started Better. It was called Better Today because when I was suicidal, one of the big things was all I wanted to be was better, and I had this really big the way I looked at what I was I was never going to be okay until I was better. And that's a fucking shitty way to look at yourself. You're constantly looking 10 steps down the road. And I changed the way I thought about it, and I went, I have to be better today. I have to pick one thing I can do that's going to make me feel better today, and do that. And if you can repeat that action, that's why it's one action a day in that journal. You don't need to learn everything. Take it slow. Stop looking at yourself like I need to fix everything about myself. Go, what's one thing I can do that's going to make me feel better today? And just start doing those small daily actions. So that's where Better Today came up with. These are the first things that I designed. And I never intended on creating what we have at Better Today. I didn't think it was going to be this, but as I released the journal, and then I was getting so many questions about it, I was like, maybe I can just run a workshop where I can get everyone together and I can just answer all these questions. And the workshops are $40. Everything I've done, one of the biggest, most important things has been, it has to be affordable. The coaching that we're opening up now is the only thing that has a higher price tag on it. And the only reason for that is you do private weekly sessions. We have a counselor on board that does all your onboarding stuff. We have a assessment as part of your onboarding to make sure you're eligible for this, because I don't want anyone paying for it until you have to. But with Better Today, I went through a fucking nightmare trying to find the answers. And I just want to create a better process for people who are struggling to just get the answers straight away. So many people that go through the process of seeing a GP, not liking the experience, putting it off for a while. And I just think, why do people have to go through that process just to get the absolute basics? It doesn't have to be that hard.
No.
Excuse me. But yeah, since then, bro, we've done these workshops all over the place. These journals have gone out to the families through the Samaritans. They bought a heap of them. Now we are part of, Bright Now is a massive youth work agency in Newcastle. All of their carers now go through our workshops as part of the onboarding process. Master Builders Association, all their apprentices go through our workshops now. And the whole idea is just, if you know the absolute essentials, you know what to do as soon as you start struggling, you know what to do if you are struggling, and you know how to just take one step in the right direction. And I think that's all we're about at Better Today, is just having people have clear, simple steps towards living a happier and healthier life.
It's necessary. And the term better, some people can get caught up on, if I'm always striving to be better, does that mean I'm not good enough? Because someone messaged me about that, because I was like, I'll be the best version of myself. And they're like, some people can take that as I'm not good enough. And that shifted my mind. I was like, fuck, that is true. But just because we're saying becoming the best version of yourself doesn't mean you're not good enough.
Listen, there's a thing that's happened lately through this mass release of information. When we talk, we're talking about singular outcomes. You know what I mean? We're saying, let's be better. And there is always going to be someone that goes, does that mean I'm not good enough? It's like, no, that's in your head. I didn't say that. And I don't feel obliged to slow down and explain everything. That if you don't like what we say, I encourage you. Like, so I had somebody on my Instagram a while ago. I won't call him out, but he blew me up about something. And I said, brother, like, there's heaps of people to listen to. If what I'm saying isn't for you, by all means, find somebody who is saying what you need. Like, I can't stop trying to help everyone because I'm afraid of one person hearing it wrong. Do you know what I mean? And I'm all for people putting their hand up, asking questions, but please don't get angry at people like yourself or people like me who what are we trying to do? We're only trying to help people. And you want to go, well, maybe someone's going to get the wrong impression about that. And you're like, brother, there's worse things to get the wrong impression about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You picked the best possible thing you could and told me that upset me a little bit. It's like, how do you get through life if someone trying to help a lot of people has fucking ruined your morning? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all up to them and how they take it. We're just putting out the information that we feel needs to be out there.
It's hard, man. People are, well, that didn't sound right, and it's like, I hate to tell you, brother, but like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine.
Definitely.
and find your tribe. Go and find the people that you gel with and you fuck with, and what they say, man, that excites you. Because if you're listening to a podcast and you go, well, I haven't really liked what you've said lately, you're like, why are you still listening? Like, go and find some people that really excite you then.
Find your tribe. You said it.
And try. Go and find some people. Like, I don't know, man. You can't.
A big part of your content is around happiness.
Yeah.
How do you define happiness?
I think happiness for me is the opportunity to chase something I enjoy. You think about it on a deeper level. Like I'm happy as long as I know what it is that I want to focus on, and I've got the opportunity to go towards it. Whatever you see that as, if you can learn to look at that version of happiness, because happiness it's very momentary, and I think people get caught up in it. They think excitement is happiness. You can get deep here. Ready? You might have the most exciting weekend, but it's not truly happy. It's exciting, and we conflate how we might feel in different circumstances as that is what made us happy. And it's like, happiness comes in all different shapes and sizes. You might be happy when you're sitting with the boys and you're watching the footy and you get like you're having a laugh. But happiness sometimes too is knowing. My biggest happiness right now is knowing I'm choosing where I'm going over the next couple of years. I do this exercise with people. Grab a piece of paper. Have you got one?
No.
Okay. If you grab a piece of paper, right, draw a big circle on it and break the circle into at least 4 sections. One for career, one for health, one for finances, career, health, finances, self-development. So there's all different boxes, family. So what I want you to do, if you went around the circle and on the outside you number them as your priorities. So some people are going to say, my family's a priority. Some people are going to say getting rich is a priority. It's fine. Go around the circle. Order them in your priorities so you know what's most important to me going around the circle. Then on the inside of the circle where you've labelled them, score what it is out of 10. So where do you see your finances out of 10 right now? Where do you see your family status out of 10 right now? Where do you see your self-development? Pick the lowest score. Ask yourself, how would I feel if I could bring that score up? The hard thing that people have to do is, if you are going to choose to focus on finances and improve your finances, you better make sure the thing that you do the second most is ordered number 1 or number 2 on the outside, because your downtime outside self-improvement should be spent with your priorities. And I think if you can do that little equation, you will become happier, because you're choosing something to improve that, choosing what in your life that needs improving, and choosing outside of that, where is my most important fucking priority and how can I spend more time doing that? That's a hard exercise to do because we're not looking at it, but that there, I get to this fucking really, I break things down as much as I can. What's the simplest way to look at it? And it's like, for me, that was it. I don't do everything that I want to do right now. Right? I don't have enough money to, I don't have a car at the moment. I sold my car to keep this thing going.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, I know I'd be happier focusing on this. This is where my happiness is right now. And I've learned to just go, if you are happy doing something, don't be mad that all this other shit goes on without you. You have to be willing to make a few sacrifices. Pick what your priorities are. Make sure you've got time and energy in that space. Pick what you want to focus on. If you can do that little simple equation, bro, you will be happy.
It's like the saying, like, you can have anything you want, but you can't have it all at once. You got to work on one priority at a time.
You have to be willing to drop a couple of balls to focus on the ones that you want. You see people juggling too much shit in life, man. You drop 2 or 3 of those things, you realize, fuck, I only needed these 2 things, and I'm fucking happier than I've ever been. We're so distracted. There's so many things we want in life. Until you work out what your priorities are, you will always feel conflicted. I mean, I talk to people about morals and values a lot lately. If you're one of those nervous, anxious people who feels like when the world looks at you, they see something wrong. Ask yourself what you're putting forward into the world. What is the world seeing when they look at me? Are they seeing a confident person? They're seeing someone who's caring, who's compassionate. I think when you try to be too many things and the world looks at you, you don't know what part of the fucking world, you don't know what they're looking at. So you've got to ask yourself, what's important for me to show up as? What's important for me to set time aside for? Because when you do that and you start sticking to your word, when the world looks at you, you start to get a little bit proud. You're like, I don't mind you looking at me. I'm working on myself. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's what you do. That's what everyone does. And I think everyone who's doing these podcasts has done that to a degree. That's why it's beautiful. That's why you see so many people happy running their own podcast. They might have 10 listeners. They might have 10,000 listeners, but I've chosen what I want to spend my time doing. And the world starts to affect you a little bit less because, you've got these moments in your life where you're like, I'm happy.
That's it. Breaking down that happiness, essentially it's having purpose and then the freedom to go chase that purpose.
That's it. That's what I should have said.
Man, this has been an amazing conversation. If the people want to find out more about yourself, come to your workshops, how can they find all that?
So always through our Instagram, _Better Today. Our Facebook is Better Today. Our website, wearebettertoday.com. We have workshops coming up in Central Coast on the 29th, Sydney on the 1st, in Camaray. I don't even know if that's a good area. I was trying to pick areas in Sydney. I was like, I don't know. If you don't know, we're in trouble. If you're from Camaray, can you ring me, please? We're going to do more, but right now we've got Central Coast, Sydney and Maitland. And I want to keep doing these on a bigger scale. We've got some exciting things happening in the back end that I think will allow us to do this for a lot more people in a lot more areas. But yeah, like reach out through the socials, have these conversations. I feel blessed that I hate knowing people are struggling. I truly do. But I feel so glad that if they are, I've got something that can help them. That means everything to me. So we've got more workshops coming up. We'll give these journals out to you guys. Start finding some more ways to get these resources out there to people. But thank you.
All good, bro. So 1st of July, Sydney. It's a Saturday.
1st of July, yeah. Sweet. 10 a.m. North's Club in Camaray.
I'm going to come.
You going to come? I got your ticket. You'll be there.
Yeah,
love it.
Bro. We have a closing tradition on the podcast.
Oh, God.
The previous guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who it is. So the question for you is, what was the single worst thing that you went through? At the time, it felt like it was such a bad thing, but it turned out to actually be the best thing that you've ever gone through.
Being suicidal.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think I love what I do and I love helping people. And I never would have got into this if I didn't go through that. And it's a weird thing to be happy about, but I love me. I've got to this stage of self-love where I enjoy who I am and I'm happy with who I am. And I think I never would have had this deep introspective perspective on myself if I didn't go through what I did. So that was the best thing that could happen to me.
Ty, thank you, my man.
Appreciate you, bro.
This has been
you guys.
A crazy chat.
Crazy chat, man. I just want to say I'm proud of you. Like that you've got this incredibly positive, helpful. Like you're exactly the same as me. That's why we connected, brother. Because you've got this same attitude towards. I just want to make sure people know how to move forwards. And I said this last night to the guy that I was talking to, man. That's what makes the world go round. It's just the people who want to do good and they do good. And that's the most important thing.
Appreciate it, bro. That means a lot. And as I said, I appreciate you making the 4-hour train trip down here. Super grateful.
Get that car back soon.
Super grateful. For the listeners, I know you would have got some value out of today's episode. Please check out everything Ty's doing. Go to one of his workshops. I'm going to do a giveaway for these beautiful journals. And yeah, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Guys, I've teamed up with Ty Leonard from Better Today. We had an amazing conversation and connection through our podcast, and we thought, you know what? let's take it further. Let's deepen this connection. And Ty's actually put together this journal. It's a 6-week journal. He's worked with psychologists, nutritionists, put together which I would call a mental fitness journal. It encapsulates everything that we speak about here at the Better Project when it comes to mind, body, spirit. And I thought, you know what? We're so aligned here. Let's team up. These journals honestly take the stress out of accessing mental health education. And they give you a chance to learn what simple daily decisions can be impacting our mental health and how you can take the action to improve your mental fitness day in and day out. If you're interested, click the link in the description and use the discount code BETTAR, that's BETAR, to receive 15% off.